Tuesday edition, Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason with the question that we will answer. Were Pat Bryant and RJ Harvey hotter prospects than some think, mates? We're learning some stuff here after the draft.
Learning some stuff, yes. Michael Silver of The Athletic, he's been an NFL reporter for a long time. He usually embeds himself with one NFL team during the draft, gets in their draft room, and there was something in his embedded report that ties directly to the Denver Broncos, and I think was eye-opening because, let's face it, I think there were some out there who were underwhelmed by the day 2 skill position picks of RJ Harvey and Pat Bryant. Thought maybe the Broncos could have done better. Certainly, I'll say this for the Pat Bryant pick. There were a lot of us in the media room on Friday night who saw that and thought, ooh, wow. Pat Bryant maybe thought day 3 type of prospect. Thought he would go off the board a little bit later. Certainly saw that 40 time that he recorded at the combine and thought that 4.6 plus number meant that he would go a bit later. But as we learned from Michael Silver in The Athletic, there was one team that really had their eye on both RJ Harvey and Pat Bryant, and that was the Jacksonville Jaguars. And particularly for Harvey, if the Broncos had not taken Harvey, if they'd waited, if they'd said, okay, we're going to wait on Harvey until round 3, they would not have gotten RJ Harvey. And the Jaguars today might be kicking themselves, particularly Liam Cohen, their head coach, really wanted RJ Harvey. And that's significant, Cease, because where did Liam Cohen coach last year?
Tampa Bay.
Which running back did he bring in last year in the draft?
Bucky Irving.
Your favorite, my favorite, coming out in the draft. At least one of our favorites. Bucky Irving for me, along with Braylon Allen. You were a Bucky Irving guy. And Bucky Irving was outstanding for the Bucs last year. That game in Tampa Bay might have turned out differently if they'd fed Bucky Irving earlier and more often back in week 3 than they did. And Liam Cohen going to Jacksonville as their head coach, youngest head coach in the NFL, wanted his version of Bucky Irving to feed and believed it could be RJ Harvey. So, as Michael Silver reported in The Athletic, the second round was going on, and Liam Cohen was sitting there becoming, quote, antsy, to the point where Cohen said, quote, let's say, bleep it and get him, unquote. And their new general manager, also the youngest is positioned in the NFL, James Gladstone, said to be patient, saying, quote, we've got to roll the dice at some point, unquote. In other words, to stand pat. Rolling the dice was to stand pat and wait for their turn in the draft. So Cohen wanted to move up. In other words, jump teams, including the Broncos. So Liam Cohen wanted to jump up and get RJ Harvey. The Broncos, of course, moved back a couple of times, thinking they could get RJ Harvey. So this is the dance that goes on in the draft. The Broncos moving down, believing they could still get RJ Harvey. The Jaguars sitting there in their office down in Duval County, Florida, believing that they could stand pat, at least James Gladstone believing they could stand pat, and Liam Cohen thinking, no, we've got to move up and get our guy RJ Harvey. And in the end, the Broncos end up winning, and the Jaguars end up not getting their guy, Liam Cohen, thinking, man, if we'd moved up, we could have gotten RJ Harvey. But the fact that Liam Cohen, who nailed things, was part of a Buccaneer team that nailed things getting Bucky Irving and believed that RJ Harvey could be his guy, I think that's actually got some significance, Cease, in terms of did the Broncos nail this pick?
Quite a bit of significance for a few reasons. One, and I'd said it on the air, I think on the radio, where it's like they must have had intel that RJ Harvey was going to go sooner than I thought. I thought Harvey would be a third rounder.
Yeah.
I thought Pat Bryant would be a fifth rounder. Let's put a pin in Bryant for now, but let's focus on Harvey because I don't have the quote in front of me, but last year after the draft, it was Liam Cohen who said about Bucky Irving, this is what a perfect running back looks like. And then on 42% of the snaps, what was the number? 1,500 all-purpose yards?
Yeah.
On 42% of the snaps. So even if, and they had Rashad White there, so we have to think of like White and Bucky Irving and how Irving came on in the season. Would Harvey be someone who comes on later in the season, much like Bucky Irving did last year? We also have to look at who Jacksonville still has. I believe they haven't traded Trevor Etienne, right?
Yeah.
So they still have their former top back, and they still wanted RJ Harvey. Think about that.
I mean, really, for Bucky Irving, you know who, I mean, it wasn't exactly because there was a higher percentage of the yardage that came via the ground versus the pass game, but an approximate comp on Bucky Irving was Alvin Kamara in terms of the production. Right there around 1,500 yards. And getting there with a really high per carry average of 5.4, averaging over 8 yards per catch last year. There's meat on the bone for Bucky Irving coming back to Tampa Bay in 2025 in terms of what he can do as a pass catcher. And I actually expect, even though Liam Cohen's gone, philosophically, Tampa Bay is going to do the same things on offense because Liam Cohen's gone, but Tom Moore, the guru of that offense, the guy who's coached Peyton Manning back in the day, philosophically, they're doing the same things on offense. So you're going to see more of the same from Bucky Irving. And if they'd gotten RJ Harvey down in Tampa, I think it would have looked a lot like Bucky Irving. And so I think you're going to see RJ Harvey. It's going to look a lot, hopefully, like Alvin Kamara, perhaps. But I think it tells you that, you see teams that want to do similar things philosophically with that type of back barking up the same tree. Yeah. Right. I think it shows, not that you doubted what Sean Payton was looking for, but I think it just shows you that you're looking for similar traits. You're looking for similar things. Right. And I think it sort of, I think it affirms a little bit. Not that you really should have needed affirmation. I think if Sean Payton kind of sees this in a running back, you should probably feel good. But I think it underscores it. And also, I think it shows you why, like you said, why they took him in round 2, why they felt like they couldn't wait until round 3, even though a lot of the mock drafts said round 3 for RJ Harvey. This is where intel comes into play. And it's why I really, even though we all do our mock drafts and we all go through this, us in the media, we don't have the same information that teams have in those draft rooms. George Payton, we talk about how he's making those calls around the league. And because you make those calls and you start figuring out what teams are doing, what they're looking for in terms of trades potentially, you're also getting a little bit of a sense of what types of players they're looking for. And it's not a complete picture, but you're getting a sense of, who they're prioritizing in terms of their draft boards. And so you're not making these decisions on when you're taking players in a vacuum of information. You have some bits and pieces. You're not making the decision on RJ Harvey in round 2 in a vacuum. And this is where I think some of the intel coming in said, if you want RJ Harvey, you got to get him now. And I think some of their intel said, if you want Pat Bryant, you got to get him when you did in round 3, even though all of us sitting there on the outside, not the inside, the outside, it arched our eyebrows a little bit, but that's where I sit back and say, okay, they must have had some info that said, if you want Pat Bryant, you better get him right now.
Yeah, better make the move for Pat Bryant. And it makes me think of Liam Cohen and Pat Bryant and how he'd want him to play which role, Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. He would want him to play the Chris Godwin role. Mm-hmm. He would want the run after the catch. I mean, did the Broncos just get the new Chris Godwin? And I have a Kenny Golladay comp, which I think is really good on Pat Bryant. And I've said Bryant I'm excited about him with that run after the catch ability. And if their intel said you had to take him now, George Payton didn't want to roll the dice. James Gladstone rolled the dice and he lost.
Yes. Now with Pat Bryant and the Jaguars' interest, according to Michael Silver, the Jaguars were considering Bryant later than round 3, and it was a lesser note than RJ Harvey. There was to go with the RJ Harvey. What Liam Cohen saw in him were the talents as a runner, and also the physique of RJ Harvey. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this, don't fall into the 5'8" small back. Focus on the fact he's 5'8", 207, which is like 5'10", 225. Okay, this guy's got some muscle on him. He's strong. With Pat Bryant, they were looking at him a little bit later, but the note that Michael Silver passed along is that Tony Baselli, who's a part of the Jaguars front office now, when he found out that Pat Bryant was off the board, Baselli was informed, and all Baselli said was found out when he found out the Broncos took him. Baselli just said, "Bastards." Hey, he really wanted Pat Bryant. Of course, Pat Bryant is a Jacksonville guy. They wanted his talent. They wanted to bring him home. But they think about that they're constructing this offense. Liam Cohen certainly knows what he's doing. But like you said, wanted that big target. So you mentioned Chris Godwin there, right? Wanted somebody like
slant
that.
God.
Yeah.
Could Pat Bryant be that slant God? I mean, his run after the catch ability, that's what highlights that in his clutch gene.
Yeah. Michael Thomas, there's the comp right there that Sean Payton threw out there that took our breath away. I think, I don't know if everyone else in the room had the same visceral reaction I did when I heard Sean Payton say Mike Thomas. Like when he said, I would like that. When he said that, I'm like, whoa, like that was throwing a grenade into the room for me when he said that name.
Right.
I mean, and he tried to walk it back a bit. Like he understood the implications of what he was saying. Like
gravitas.
Like he knew, like he didn't want, like he knew sort of what he did, and he sort of tried to kind of walk it back to like say, okay, I'm not expecting that, but you can't say that sort of name without, putting a huge little bit of a burden on that guy, right? All of a sudden, I mean, it was like last year, to a lesser degree, because no offense, Tim Patrick is not Michael Thomas, but when you have a 7th round pick in Devon Vele, and then immediately Sean Payton says Tim Patrick, a guy who's, been around for several years with this team, and you're like, whoa. I mean, also, Tim Patrick's very well thought of in the building. Like if you had an Employee of the Month plaque in Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit, Tim Patrick's name would have probably been on there a couple of dozen times over the last 5 or 6 years, right? Because of how diligent the dude is. And you just compared Devon Vele on the day you brought him into this guy. Like, whoa, hold on.
Pat Bryant to Michael Thomas is something, yeah. Mason. I'll ask you this. Is Sean Payton one to throw around names willy-nilly? We've had some tight ends, some interesting tight ends. Lucas Kroll was pretty good at minicamp last year, I heard.
I heard that from somebody.
Has he ever said Jimmy Graham? You know what I mean? Lucas Kroll, man, I see some Jimmy Graham. Has he ever said that? Donald Parham, I see some Jimmy Graham. Has he ever said that? You know the answer. Our audience knows the answer. It's no.
Is he talking, though, about the body type, or is he talking about the resume, the basketball background? That's the question I have. I wonder if he's talking a little bit about the basketball. Again, with Cale Launer, I tweeted out on Saturday, I knew more about him as a basketball player. Specifically remembering him from 3 years ago at BYU before he hit the portal and went to Baylor and kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Different pick, different round, but you didn't hear Jimmy Graham comparisons there.
Yeah.
So when he says Michael Thomas with Pat Bryant, I think alert. Yeah. Alarm bells should be going off for people out there. Be like, oh, okay, what does Sean Payton like to do? Prove himself right. RJ Harvey, I know it's not a fantasy show, Mace, but if you'll give me a moment.
Please.
That There's a lot of fantasy GMs that are going to take him in the first round. That's how excited the fantasy football community is. If you've seen some early rankings out there, it's RJ Harvey as a top 20 pick.
There was something I saw yesterday that got thrown into our Denver sports text chain that had him ahead of Derrick Henry. Like, what?
I saw that too. I thought that was a little much.
That was like, hold on here. Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Back it up a little bit. Like,
well, let's compare it to Bucky Irving, right? 42% of the snaps. Would you say RJ Harvey plays more or less than 42% of the snaps this year?
More.
I think it's more as well. Now, it depends on how good is Audric Estime. Like, is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? 60-40 sounds about right, Mace. You know what I mean? Maybe
Yes.
70-30 if Harvey takes off, but let's just say safely 60% RJ Harvey, 40% everyone else.
Yeah. It's partially, it's like, who else is in there? I think that's where I get this from, because it's like, okay, Breece Hall isn't in that room, right? It's Audric Estime, it's Tyler Bidet, it's Blake Watson. That's how the view is, like, okay, who's taking the snaps there from him?
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a prominent guy to take those snaps. I mean, I'm doing my preview for the Lindy's Football Annual. I'm working on it. I literally was sitting here writing it today.
Nice.
And I've got to submit a depth chart. I've got to put RJ Harvey at the top of the depth chart.
Yes.
I don't see anything else I can do here.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think I can put Audric Estime at top of the depth chart or Tyler Bidet. It's got to be RJ Harvey.
Where's Pat Bryant then?
Pat Bryant probably.
He could start opposite of Sutton.
I'm probably putting. I think I'm putting Vele at the top of the depth chart.
Okay.
Yeah, for now.
And then Mims as the third.
Yeah, I'm doing a 3-wide depth chart, and I've got Sutton, Vele, Mims as my top 3.
What's the chances in your eyes Bryant takes that spot then?
I'd say about 25%, just because I expect Vele to improve. This is the thing. I expect Vele to improve, and I expect Franklin to improve. So that's why it's not like these. And I do expect Audric Estime to improve as well. Don't get me wrong. I do think there was some significance, though, that Audric Estime was inactive for that playoff game. I think that does matter. But there's also some significance to say, okay, could Franklin maybe start week 1? There's significance that Franklin was involved so heavily early in the playoff game and, of course, had that touchdown catch. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and it's not like the guys coming back from last year are standing still. I expect Vele and Franklin to take steps forward. So that's why I can't sit here and say today that Vele or Franklin are necessarily going to cede their spots to Pat Bryant. And I do think, yeah, Audric Estime can have something to say, but second round running back is like a first rounder at a lot of other positions historically. Second round running back is immediate starter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can say like go back to
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, second round running back, immediate starter, or a second round guard to another position back in 2019, Dalton Reisner, second round guard, immediate starter. You can just go through positions. Second round edge rusher, second round quarterback, these are not immediate starters. Second round corner, not an immediate starter. But second round running back, second round guard, I'd say second round nose tackle. These are immediate starters. Second round tight end, that's kind of borderline, but often an immediate starter. Yeah, that's where positional value does come into play in determining as a second round whether you're an immediate starter or not. Second round running back, the positional value says likely week 1 starter, I would say.
Very, very interesting to consider what Pat Bryant and RJ Harvey can be. My final point on this topic today, Mace, as we're some chatty blankety blankers, is merely this. Sean did a really good job being quiet, and Jacksonville did not. Jacksonville's had some leaks. I won't say who, but they've had some. This is before Gladstone. Gladstone takes over. We like Gladstone as a young GM. He comes from the Rams. He's an analytical guy. I love the philosophical way he was speaking about Travis Hunter, because if you don't think in that manner, not to sound like a snob, but if you don't think in like a spiritual philosophical manner, I don't want you running my team, basically. Yeah. So I like Gladstone a lot. But somehow, some way, the Broncos knew, and it's probably more than just Jacksonville, but the Broncos had almost the, I would say, instinct to take Bryant a round or two early and RJ Harvey a round early. And this, again, is based on media rankings.
But we know now that RJ Harvey wasn't around early. That
wasn't going to be.
Yeah. I mean, we know now that RJ Harvey, it turned out they picked him at basically the right spot if they really wanted him.
And they rolled the dice moving back.
Yeah.
They could have got him at 51.
I mean, now you think to yourself, that roll of the dice almost bit him in the butt.
Yeah, it's
because
pretty
if Liam Cohen had won that argument within the Jaguars draft room, then RJ Harvey wouldn't be a Bronco. Can you imagine what it would have been like? Okay, think about this, because George Payton is Mr. Move Down More Darts.
Oh, Sean would have been mad.
If they had moved down and the Jaguars had jumped them and they'd not gotten RJ Harvey. Oh, my goodness.
Sean's making every pick after that.
Oh.
You got to make it up.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been an uncomfortable press conference after that. After day 2. You could have cut the tension with a chainsaw.
Bucky Irving, RJ Harvey, man alive. I will quote the rare Melissa Etheridge quote. Similar features.
Does that mean similar expectations? Are we all of a sudden expecting from RJ Harvey what the Buccaneers got from Bucky Irving?
I like 1,200 all-purpose yards.
Okay.
If we look at Darren Sproles,
15. You're not expecting 15.
Right. And if you look at Darren Sproles' first year with Sean Payton, it was 600 yards receiving on 86 catches and 600 yard rushing on like 85 carries. So let's, somewhere math it up around 1,200 all-purpose yards. I think that's a fine rookie season.
Okay. And then who's next? Like, what's the next yardage total from that room? If he's getting 1,200 all-purpose, is someone else getting to 700 all-purpose?
Should be Estime, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, they're kind of planning on that.
Yeah, you're going to need that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This isn't going to be a successful season without it. Someone's got to be a legit RB2.
Did Sean Payton just do it again?
We're fixing to find out, aren't we?
I love it. I love it, man. Give me chills.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Okay.
It's exciting. Wish we could start the season tomorrow.
Yeah, and
I need some time off. I need to rest a little bit at some point.
Yeah, you're mandatory have to take days off because you don't take days off. So take some days off.
I'm literally forfeiting vacation time. I have to take some time off at some point.
Yes. We will be doing that a little bit later on this off season, but we are here for you. He is Andrew Mason. Mace, before we're out of here, how can folks help us out on YouTube?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you never miss a vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's a BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.